Hi guys, so today we're gonna go out to Windsor and change out the brakes on my other WRX. So we've got another 03 WRX, this one's black. We don't usually feature it on videos because there's kind of a lot wrong with it and it's just needs a lot of work. The guy who owned it did it before us really did a number on it. So we're gonna go out to my parents' house and replace the brake pads and rotors. The reason we're doing out there is because they have a nice big driveway and way more space. We won't have to worry about putting the car on jacks and stuff in the middle of the apartment parking lot. So we'll have more space out there. So as soon as we get there, we'll go over the process and what tools you need and everything, and that'll be our video for today. First, I'm just gonna go over what parts or tools you'll need to do this, and then kind of just a basic overview of the process, and then we'll go ahead and get going. Obviously, you are going to need new rotors. That's right here. We've got some high performance rotors from StopTech. We've got new brake pads as well. You're gonna need a jack and some jack stands, 4 of them, not 2. You'll need a C-clamp so you can put your pistons on your calipers back all the way in. Make sure everything is flush and pressurized the way it should be. You'll need some socket wrenches, a rubber mallet, an extension for your socket wrench if you need it. I think that's it, at least for tools. This is my other 03 WRX. This is the black one. There's a whole lot that's wrong with it. I could go over it all, but maybe we'll do that in another video. But we're gonna start with this tire here, and we'll take it off and replace the rotor and the pads, and then it won't be so scary to drive this one. And now we're going to loosen up the lug nuts and get the ball rolling. We're going to take the tire off. So it should be a 19mm socket wrench. Once you've got your wheel off, then you can go ahead and take off your calipers. So for this one, you will need the 14mm socket. Let's go ahead and loosen those up. You may need a hammer or a pipe of some sort. Go ahead and tap it a few times to loosen it up. Crack them open if you can't get it off just with your hands. And then there's another one on the bottom here. There we go. So now you can go ahead and slide your caliper off. Looks like my brake pads are gonna stay with that. And then this, you definitely don't want to let it just dangle because it will stress out your brake line. So make sure you kind of just balance it on another part of your suspension unit or something so that you don't ruin your brake lines. You can see the brake pads here. We'll take those off in a second once I get the rest of this off. So there's 2 more bolts that you'll need the 17mm socket for. These are also on the back side. Okay, and you can just slide the brake pads right out of there, set them aside. Try and remember which one came from where if you plan on replacing them. We don't, so it's kind of nice. Or reusing them. Did I say reuse or replace? You should also make sure that your rubber boots here move freely. These help keep your calipers centered. We're probably going to end up needing to grease these because it doesn't look like there's any grease on there at all. So we will go ahead and do that when we put everything back together. And then your rotor should just slide off. If it's on there too tight, this one seems like it'll come off just fine. But if it's on there really tight and you can't seem to get it off, you can take a rubber mallet like this and tap along the outside edge. There's also these 2 pilot holes on the rotor. You can use a pair of 8mm bolts, machined bolts, not threaded bolts, and kind of wrench them in there until the rotor comes off. But this one's just going to slide off, so we don't need to do any of that. So now we have our nice shiny new rotor. And It'll probably come marked which side, which is convenient. One thing that you guys should be careful about when you're putting new rotors on is these grooves are directional. Looks like our rotors came with directions of which way it should go, but make sure that you have these grooves facing in the right direction when you put your rotors on. Okay, then we're just gonna slide this rotor right back on, just like that. Well, that was a nightmare. After much wrestling and attempting to position things in the right places, I finally got the bracket back on. So if that happens to you, just take your time. Don't get frustrated with it. It'll happen eventually. Or maybe do get frustrated with it. I don't know. Sometimes I work better when I'm frustrated. Now we're going to take the brake pads and put them in from either side instead of doing it first. It turned out to just be easier that way. I can't imagine trying to balance these in here and put that thing on while keeping the rotor straight and everything else. Oh man. So we're just gonna go ahead and slide these in. This one goes in the back, I think, on the inside. And then this one we're just gonna put on the front. So line up these grooves on the side and just kind of rest them in there. Just like that. And the other one. There we go. Now we got the pads on. Okay, so we're gonna grease our caliper pins here because they really need it. So these are just on the inside of your bracket. They just pull right out. There's a little rubber boot here that kind of lines the whole thing and keeps it protected. It should move freely inside the bracket, so if you test them and they move freely, or you pull them out and the grease looks like it's okay, then you don't really need to re-grease it. But these are kind of uneven. One was like had new grease and one had really old grease, so I'm just gonna redo both of them. So just, you know, a little bit of grease on your caliper pins.
Sick.
So those just slide right back in the holes. You do want to make sure that you get this one side of the rubber boot all the way on the inside of the hole on the bracket, just to make sure that it seals and stays clean and everything. Next is to put the caliper back on. So these pistons go in the back after they've been pushed back in. Just kind of slide them over the pads. So I needed just a little tiny bit of grease to get the caliper on over this corner. Fortunately it was right there. But it just slides on. Make sure your holes get lined up and that your pins don't get pinched or broken off in a certain direction. Now we put the wheel back on. Woo! I'm tired. Ugh. So we've got our lug nuts kind of finger tightened. One thing that you should make sure of when you're putting your tires back on, or your wheels back on, is to not over tighten it on one side so that your tire stays straight and doesn't like wedge to one side or the other, because then it won't roll properly and you could cause it to lock up or your wheel to fall off or any number of terrible things. So now we need our torque wrench, and we'll just go ahead and torque these down. You don't want to over tighten them because your wheels can lock up, and you don't want to under tighten them because you can lose a wheel. So make sure you check your owner's manual to see what lug nut torque specs you should be looking at. So we're going to be tightening these to about 75 foot-pounds pressure, and that'll work out pretty well. Quick shout out to my dad for hooking us up with a much better light than the ones we were using. I can actually see what I'm doing now, and hopefully you can too. Alright, like I said, we're just gonna torque down these lug nuts. So I've got a nice torque wrench here. It's set to appropriate settings. One thing I may have forgotten to mention earlier, when you're tightening your lug nuts on, make sure you tighten in a star pattern, so opposite sides. That helps ensure your wheel stays on flush. Once you finish the one side, just go ahead and do the same thing to the other side. Should be pretty straightforward, and after that you'll be done. So thank you so much for watching. Race Cars Are for Girls. This is how to replace your brake rotors and pads. You know, maybe one day here soon we'll learn how to finish a video before the sun goes down, but until then, thanks for sticking around. See you later.